Hello, I'm Gil Friend, CEO of Natural Logic and author of The Truth About Green Business. And I'm very happy to be speaking with you today from our headquarters in Berkeley, California, about the mysteriously elusive sustainability business case. Natural Logic works with clients ranging from Hewlett-Packard and Coca-Cola to eBay and SunPower to the massive procurement organization of the U.S. Department of General Services. In each case, we help our clients design, implement, and measure profitable sustainability strategies that are sufficient to the challenge of building a new global economy. We do this by putting sustainability at the heart of enterprise and using that sustainability lens to uncover opportunities and hidden profits that are disclosed by nature's nearly 4 billion years of trial and error and innovation. Why reinvent the wheel, we ask, when the R&D has already been done? We're in a time of unprecedented and unpredictable change. Things are moving very quickly. 40 years ago, there was no internet. 20 years ago, the Berlin Wall had just come down. 7 years ago, no Facebook. Twitter, barely 5 years old. In fact, Clay Shirky observes, what's the place of 5-year plans in a world that changes so rapidly? And the changes aren't just technology, they're changes in the very ways that we live, inventing the intelligent infrastructure and relearning our relationship to the living systems that support the human economy. In the face of this, too many companies, including many who should know better, fear and resist these changes and still think that you have to choose between making money and making sense. Well, you don't. Other companies know that they need to engage these changes but seem lost. One data point in particular that stands out for me was the Business of Sustainability report produced by the MIT Sloan Management School and the Boston Consulting Group late in 1999. What was notable in this report wasn't that 92% of the more than 1,500 global executives that they surveyed said that their company was addressing sustainability in some way. What was striking was this: it was that more than 70% of the respondents said that their company had not developed a business case for sustainability. In fact, and this is a quote from the report, the majority of sustainability actions undertaken to date appear to be those limited to those necessary for meeting regulatory requirements. And that, to my mind, is about as far from a business case and about as exciting or as strategic as flossing your teeth. It's a good thing to do, it's a good defensive move, but it's hardly a path to adding value and enriching your life or enriching your business. The problem is that most companies won't make a move without understanding the business case, and sadly most people, whether in business or in government or in NGOs, still assume that sustainability and environmental performance and social responsibility will inevitably cost money. The more optimistic among them assume that it will at least cost money in the short term, while potentially adding value in the long term. But there are several problems with this perspective. First, it's mired in the short-term thinking that plagues modern business. Second, it sees sustainability only as a cost, not as an investment. Third, it demands higher returns, higher hurdle rates from sustainability investments than from other investments. Fourth, like many assumptions, it blinds people to the facts. I've had countless interactions where executives literally couldn't see the attractive ROIs on the page because they were so convinced that environmental improvement had to cost them money. And the fifth problem, this perspective is fundamentally wrong. In our experience, based on Natural Logic's strategic work with dozens of leading companies, our efficiency assessments at hundreds of facilities, and tracking the work of many other companies and practitioners, it's clear that there is simply no necessary conflict between sustainability performance and economic performance. In fact, they often go hand in hand. As we say on the cover of my book, The Truth About Green Business, you don't have to choose between making money and making sense. Why else would Henry Kravis, the co-founder of private equity giant KKR, say, quote, "The business case for environmental management has never been stronger," unquote. In fact, KKR announced last year that it's expanding its green portfolio program to cover 20% of the companies in its massive portfolio. Making the business case has to include three elements. It has to provide a good return on investment of money and time and brand. It has to generate more value than other potential uses of that time and money and brand. And it needs to do this in financial and operational and strategic dimensions. There are many elements that fall into this. First, of course, is cost, as we've been discussing. The simple fact is that less waste means less cost, means more profit. Less waste has a beneficial environmental impact and a beneficial financial impact. But don't fall into the trap of expecting different standards of performance for environmental investments versus other investments. Compare ROI to ROI, payback to payback, the same standards for each. So cost is one element of the sustainability business case. Brand is another, the impact on brand equity and brand value, which for many companies in the world today is worth far more than their physical and tangible assets. Impacts on innovation. Sustainability initiatives can often accelerate the pace of innovation and the quality of innovation of product and process. Impact on license to operate. The very permission to do business in many regions of the world depends on meeting sustainability expectations. We saw this most dramatically recently when the European Union instituted the WE and RoHS standards, and nearly half the global electronics industry, with a third of their revenue at risk, wasn't prepared to comply with regulatory changes that they had seen coming. Now, half were not able to comply by their own assessment. Half were practicing what we would call regulatory insulation, operating ahead of the standards, higher performance standards than the regulators require, giving companies the ability to invest in engineers and product developers and marketing rather than investing in lawyers and lobbyists trying to thwart or keep up with standards. In fact, this approach yields significant benefits. Gary Pfeiffer, the former CFO of the DuPont Corporation, said some years ago that DuPont's sustainability initiative, which included goals like zero waste as well as zero defects and zero injuries, Pfeiffer said DuPont's sustainability initiative was the best investment the company had made in years. And then, of course, there's the matter of risk. Sustainability is an insulator from risk, whether it's a matter of prices, and we see this now with rapidly rising oil prices around the world, volatility of resource supplies, reliability of supply chains, shifting market expectations as consumer standards rise around the world, not just in the developing countries, as regulations tighten up, and as incentives and subsidies shift. You may know that currently in the United States there's a growing debate, surprisingly represented by both the left and right of our political spectrum, calling for an elimination of all subsidies on energy, on fossil fuels and nuclear, as well as on renewables, to remove the distortions that these subsidies provide into the marketplace. Risk, of course, speaks to the fiduciary duty of executives and directors who have a responsibility to shareholders to be prepared for what Peter Schwartz would call the inevitable surprises. Some companies were shocked by the European regulations, just as some are shocked by rising energy prices. But those who look carefully at the future understand the inevitability of these changes and start preparing early to respond to them and to lead markets in a way that's profitable. So these are all many financial and technical and strategic reasons for embracing the sustainability business case. The other reason is just that it's the right thing to do, to work for a world that is healthy and safe and profitable for all who participate in it. The plan, the guidance, the playbook for this transition is really hiding in plain sight. It's the 3.8 billion years of open source research and development that's been conducted for us at no charge by the Earth's living systems and the evolutionary processes that have brought us to this point. Some of the things we learn from this playbook are that living systems are powered by renewable energy almost entirely. They are cyclical. Waste products of one organism become the food of the next. And China has recognized this in a world-leading way with your cyclical materials policies that establishes this approach at the level of national policy. This shifts from thinking of wastes as problems or even as hazardous materials and thinks about waste as digestible resources that can be metabolized into the economic process to create continued cycles of value. In living systems, another lesson we learned is that the hierarchies are relatively flat. Decisions are made near the point of action. Hierarchies are functional rather than political. And the advantage of this is not a matter of ideology, this is a matter of responsiveness, of being ability to respond rapidly to changing circumstances. And all this in the context of nature, a rigorous laboratory, in the words of Janine Benyus, a laboratory in which the defective products are quickly recalled by their creator. So there's great lessons for us there. But there's a deeper question about the business case. How do you use the business case? Do you use it to determine what you should do or to determine how you do it? You see, the numbers can't tell you what you should do. They can only tell you how well you're doing it. And they can perhaps help you make and defend the business case, and they can sometimes help you recognize and evaluate opportunities. But as for what you should do, well, you all already know the answer, I think. You should look to your core purpose, to your reason for being and your company's reason for being, and do what you and your business are really here to do. A business case is not a substitute for insight or leadership or courage. If you try to anticipate every possible use for new business models, says Joey Ito, the CEO of Creative Commons, it won't work. You have to look for applications that are hard to predict, that are locally driven, and in Ito's words, that are full of weirdness. And you have to make decisions and commit capital and sometimes bet the farm on worlds that are still coming into being and futures that no one can predict. The question is not, can you find a viable business case for sustainability and innovation and prosperity for the carbon-constrained world that is now heading our way? The question is, how will you create one? Because you will find one, you will create one, or you will die. Is this challenging enough for you? Well, if not, let me remind you of the astute observation from Bill Gates, who said, if you can show me the business case, you're too late. So my question to you is this: will you escape with the familiar dodge of, well, it's only business? Will you escape with the intellectual laziness of, well, we've always done it this way? Or will you embrace the personal and business and social and political challenge of solving the problem? Not just working on it, but solving it. The challenge of inventing and delivering profitable, viable, and dare I say, joyful pathways to, in the words of my mentor, Buckminster Fuller, a world that works for 100% of humanity in the shortest possible time, through spontaneous cooperation, without ecological offense or the disadvantage of anyone. Thank you for your attention. I wish you a successful conference and a successful year, and I look forward to having our next conversation face-to-face in China. Thank you.